So now let's look at what happened during his trial, including the psychiatric perspective. And then I'll tell you what I think. So Kaczynski was assessed by numerous forensic psychiatrists and psychologists, and as I said, some of them diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. A renowned forensic psychiatrist named Dr. 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡 said that he wasn't psychotic, didn't have schizophrenia, but instead suffered from schizoid or schizotypal personality disorder. The schizoid personality disorder, it's a bit complex. I don't want to go into it in a lot of detail, although I might do in a future vid. If you want to hear about that, let me know. Briefly, I'll describe it as follows. It's a chronic and pervasive condition, like all personality disorders, and it's characterized by social isolation and a feeling of indifference towards other people. So people who live with this disorder are often described as distant or withdrawn. They tend to avoid social interactions with other people. So it's quite similar to negative symptoms of schizophrenia, but the difference would be that in schizophrenia, there would typically also be positive symptoms at some point, like delusions or hallucinations. Incidentally, Dr. 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡 has crept up in another one of my videos because he was very instrumental to the evidence of another case, which I've done a video on, and that's the case of 𝐿𝐴𝐲𝐻𝐻, who suffered from schizophrenia. Go check out that video. So Dr. 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡 gave very poor quality testimony in 𝐿𝐴𝐲𝐻𝐻's case, which led her to initially being found guilty of murder of her own 5 children, and then she went to prison. But then later this finding was overturned because people found holes in Dr. 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡's testimony, and then later 𝐴𝐲𝐻𝐻 was sent to hospital instead of prison, where she currently is, and in my view, because she's so unwell, that's the correct place for her. So after his arrest, Kaczynski tried to hang himself and he failed, and then later on he was found competent to stand trial, which is kind of the American version of fit to plead. So his own defense lawyers and attorneys tried to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, Kaczynski himself refused this and denied that he was mentally ill. What is that all about? So there's a few different scenarios here. One is that he was not unwell, or alternatively he was unwell but he lacked insight. And that's actually very common with people with schizophrenia. They generally believe that the experiences they're having, hearing voices or conspiratorial delusions, they actually believe they're true. So I've helped rehabilitate hundreds of people with schizophrenia. From my experience, when they do gain insight, it's not because they think that their experiences are any less real, but it's because after time has passed, they've realized that other people don't believe them, and therefore that's the way they gain sort of secondary insight. And also other people constantly show them proof that they're false. If you want to know more about that, check out my videos on hearing voices and also my video on delusions, including real life cases I've assessed where these symptoms have led to violence and offending. Obviously, I've anonymized the patients out of respect for patient confidentiality. Anyway, I ask you, what other YouTube videos tells you about their real life patients? Who has the balls to do that? Another perspective about Kaczynski denying he's mentally unwell could be that he was so invested in his ideas, in everything he wrote in his manifesto, that he didn't want his ideas to be discredited by him being diagnosed with a mental illness, regardless of whether he actually believed that he was mentally ill or not. Just as an interesting point, Kaczynski had the longest and most expensive investigation in the history of the FBI up until that point. So he ended up serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and he was in a prison in Colorado. Interestingly, in prison he became close friends with the perpetrators of the World Trade Center bombing and also the Oklahoma City bombing. So you got to ask, with friends like those, who needs enemies? So life imprisonment, by the way, means he'll spend the rest of his life in prison, as opposed to other life sentences where a prisoner serves a minimum term known as a tariff and could potentially be released later on when they're deemed that they're safe. But after they're released, they're supervised and observed for the rest of their life, hence life sentence, by probation services. If you're interested to know more about how that all works, then you should check out my video, quite a recent one, on Colin Pitchfork, who is a double child rapist and double child murderer who was released from prison by parole services recently in England, causing, unsurprisingly, a high degree of controversy. Go check it out. Hello, cruel world. What you just saw there was a tiny little tantalizing taste, kind of nutty, of a much longer episode. You should go check it out if you're interested. The link will be in the description below. If you're a fan of either true crime or mental illness, or the crossover between the two, then you've got to go and check out my main YouTube channel, A Psych for Sore Minds. My name is Dr. Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. My channel covers a whole range, a smorgasbord of topics related to true crime and mental illness. For example, high-profile true crime cases with my own kind of personal psychoanalysis of individuals. I discuss issues related to criminality. I discuss individual diagnoses. I give advice about psychiatric problems. I interview ex-patients. I do a lot. There is something for everybody on my channel, and I implore you to go and check it out. You can even steal some of my ideas, palm them off as your own to impress your friends and impress people at dinner parties. It's all good. I've got your back. Until next time, stay euthymic, check out my channel, and please do not forget, I love you.